It's a handmade canoe. They dug it out. Burn it and dig it out from, I don't know what kind of wood. What does it say? I guess it does make sense. The easiest way to get rid of it is to burn the inside of it. And then you can go to work on it.
Was it true?
Yeah. As long as you can see some. Cool.
Put this on display.
Yep.
Shouldn't have broke it. She did.
It is. Well, hello. Welcome to our Dark of the Moon Ghost Tours. So something that you might know right off the bat is that you all are wearing green glow sticks. That means you bought a ticket. That means you're supposed to be
Has
here.
anybody seen the Ghost Hunters episode that we were featured in?
Oh,
All right. Every tour we give, someone always says yes when we ask that question. They have actually been here 3 times. The first
Karen mentioned that they have until 12:30 to climb.
You guys have until 12:30 to climb. All right. Anyway, back to Ghost Hunters. The first time they came was in 2006. And what they did, when you go into the lighthouse later on after the guided portion, you will see the rotunda, which is at the very bottom of the staircase. It's a round area. And Ghost Hunters set up their equipment there, and they pointed it straight up. The spiral staircase goes all the way to the top. So they were trying to see if they could video anything from the bottom of the lighthouse. And sure enough, that particular evening, they were able to capture on film what we affectionately call the Shadow Man. The Shadow Man, basically, he's been seen hundreds of times here. But what they were able to capture on film was basically head and shoulders, a silhouette, and it was obviously male. He was a couple of landings above the rotunda, and he literally leaned over the railing. He hesitated. He was basically checking them out, and then he stood back up. And of course, they're looking in their monitors and they see this, and so they get really excited. They start to try to run up behind him to see what else they can capture. He physically starts running up the staircase. We have a motion detector up at the very top where the light comes on. Nothing set off the motion detector except the Ghost Hunter people once they got up to the top. But it was obvious something was in the tower, but that something was not of the living. That's the first apparition that we have on video, and the second one is the Shadow Man is a dark figure. The second apparition that has been seen multiple times inside the tower is like a foggy, gray, misty kind of apparition. And what this has appeared is a head and shoulders. Once again, it appears to be female in form. And as this female starts to materialize, all of a sudden there's a smaller one to its left and another smaller one appears to its right. So actually the one becomes 3, and that apparition has been seen multiple times. So check it out when you're in the lighthouse. See if you see something yourself. Something that kind of sets our ghost tour apart from others around town is the fact we have 2 police reports. The first police report was one particular evening in the late hours of the night. Our security system detected that the front door was tampered with. It immediately calls the police to come out on site, as well as a staff member. Well, the police got here first, and when they got on site, they saw that the front door had been kicked in. We'd been having some trouble with, like, teenage guys late at night up to mischief in the neighborhood. So they thought, okay, we've got them this time. There's one way in, up the lighthouse, one way in, one way out. We're here, we got here really quickly. We got them this time. So they waited for the staff member to come. They drew their guns and they said, staff members, stay here at the bottom. We'll go up the tower, we'll get them. So sure enough, they went inside the tower, and they were very, very quiet, and they heard like voices, almost like arguing. And so they went ahead and they climbed, and they climbed, and they climbed, and on each landing they thought, well, surely we're going to catch up with them soon. And they continued to hear these arguing voices. They got all the way up to the top. There was no one in the tower. So the police were bumfuzzled. They came down. The staff member was waiting patiently at the bottom like he was told to do. So when they couldn't find anybody inside of the lighthouse, the staff member took them to where we have the video tapes to try to see what had transpired before they had gotten there. Sure enough, they saw 4 teenagers. They were up to no good. It clearly showed that they kicked in the front door of the lighthouse. But when they went inside the lighthouse, they didn't stay but just seconds, and they went running out and left the premises. So the police didn't know what to make of that, and of course, as all police, when they come out to an event, they have to make a police report. So sure enough, it is a documented St. Augustine police report that they were called out here. They definitely heard voices, but nothing was in it. It was about 6 months to 8 months later. We were having some more trouble out here, and so the decision was made to actually hire a security, an off-duty police officer, to sit here as security, just to see if they could come up with what was going on. And the policeman that night actually pulled his car up to right here at the brick wall. And he sat there for over a week, and absolutely nothing happened. He was pretty much bored out of his mind. But the second week, he was sitting there, he's actually watching Netflix. And all of a sudden, he notices out of his front windshield something in the courtyard, right in this area. And he described it as being like a flame of a candle. But he saw it was like pacing. All he saw was this flame of a candle. But it started on the other side of the courtyard there, and slowly it came to this side of the courtyard. And it turned around and it went back again. On the third time that he was watching it, he opened his car door to get out to investigate, what is this that I'm seeing? And as soon as the light of the car door came on, whatever it was that night actually stopped right in the middle of the courtyard. And so he stopped when it stopped. And after that, he noticed that it started darting. It darted to the left, to the right, way up high, down below. It just started going crazy. And as he was looking at his windshield, sure enough, it just darts off and goes out into the woods. He could not come up with what in the world that could have been. So he had to write that up as well as being something very, very unusual going on here at the lighthouse. All right, about 300 yards that way used to be oceanfront property. And it might, right now, there's actually Anastasia State Park, which is a man-made barrier island between us and the oceanfront. But years ago, that was oceanfront right there. St. Augustine was famous for having sandbars, and that's what shipwrecked so many of the ships that had trouble out in the ocean. That justified building a lighthouse. And you may be surprised to know that this isn't actually the first St. Augustine lighthouse. We've had one years before this one, and it was placed right there on the sand, right at the ocean front. It actually lasted for over 100 years at that location there. And eventually, it literally toppled over into the ocean. It was built on shifting sand, and as far as its foundation, and also with hurricanes, and over time, it actually failed. One of our most notable lighthouse keepers that tended that original lighthouse, his name was Joseph Andrew, and he and his wife actually lived out here on Anastasia Island, and they tended that lighthouse. And Joseph Andrew was actually from a long line of lighthouse keepers, and he and his family came over from Minorca. He tended that lighthouse for quite a few years. He was very successful at doing so. He had many duties as lighthouse keeper, but one of them was actually every 6 months using a 4-inch brush, if you can imagine this. His responsibility was whitewashing the tower of that lighthouse by hand. And in December, it was time to do his biannual whitewashing, and he built his own rigging and started at the top of the lighthouse on this scaffolding and was going to work his way around and down until he got the job finished. On this particular December day, he was up at the very top doing his job, and all of a sudden, he didn't have time to react, but the scaffolding that he had built, it shifted, and it went down on one end and broke. And when that happened, he literally hit against the lighthouse tower, and from there he hit the roof of the oil room, which was down below, and from that he ricocheted off, hit the tower again, and then hit the ground. And his back was broken before he hit the ground, and he died that day. He had a wife, he had children, young children that they were raising. He was the primary breadwinner. And that particular night after that tragedy occurred, his wife was devastated. What in the world was she going to support children? How was she going to raise children with her husband being deceased? She wrote in her journal that night that she actually climbed the tower and looked out over the ocean and just called out into the wind, "What am I supposed to do?" And she wrote, "And in my husband's voice, I heard, 'Tend the light.'" So this was in December. By early January, that's exactly what she had done. She actually took over the duties that her husband was responsible for. She actually became the first female lighthouse keeper in the state of Florida. She worked the job for many years and did a fine job at it. Being Minorcan, they were Hispanic. So she is in the history books as being the first Hispanic female lighthouse keeper as well. The obituary for her husband was in all the detail that I just described, and that was most unusual for the day. But basically it's, so-and-so passed away, he's preceded in death by so-and-so, he leaves behind his family members. Pretty much like obituaries are today. That's the way they were way back then. But the St. Augustine paper said all those gory details about what he hit and how it all happened. So they think that either his children reported because they were eyewitnesses to the event, or Maria, his wife. But all of those details were in his obituary. Maria was notable for being the first female to do that very, very difficult job. And we feel like that her spirit is still with us, even today. Back when they lived here, this island, for as far as you could see around, there was nobody else but that family. It was very isolated out here. But over time, of course, our neighbors have built around us here. And they have reported many times, there's a fishing dock out there, and the neighbors have reported having seen someone at the end of the dock down there looking out towards the water. And when they describe someone, it's always the same description, and that is someone with a lady with long dark hair and a white flowy dress. We also have had reports, we see someone with that same description at the top of our lighthouse here today. Joseph usually doesn't show up. If he does, it's normally on a foggy kind of night, but he doesn't show up nearly as much as Maria does. But if you see anyone with that description, long, dark hair, flowy white dress, keep in mind, we don't have any reenactors here. We never will. We never have. But if you see somebody that fits that description, just keep in mind, we had somebody here by the name of Maria Andrews, and she supposedly has been seen many, many times. So one of those chairs, don't be surprised if you feel a massaging of your shoulder. He was a leg down, starting with the ankle. You might feel like a little brushing on this like that. Down here is the basement. Like I said, we actually have a room. Actually, it's kind of like an alcove. We call it Creepy Corner. Creepy Corner is over here in this corner when you go down there, and it's such that a full-size man can literally go back in this little corner and you will not see him. He completely disappears. We've had crazy things to occur in that corner, most especially when children are on the tour. We've had instances where children, as part of the tour, would lean into that corner and go, shh, and then pay attention to the guide, and then go back in and say, shh. And the mom would say, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And she said, there's a man right back here, and he keeps talking to me, and I can't hear what's being said out of the mouths of babes. But anyway, check out Creepy Corner, because there's something odd about that. Remember how I mentioned about the foot? How long was it going to take to get?